The morning started the way so many harvest mornings did. Calm, quiet, filled with the hum of machines and the rhythm of work that connected me to generations before me. The sky was pale blue with a hint of autumn chill, the kind of weather that made the world feel sharper, cleaner. The corn stood tall in golden rows that swayed like waves when the breeze rolled through. My tractor moved steadily, the engine thrumming in a low, comforting growl. It was the sound of progress, the sound of feeding both my family and the community that depended on the crops. I had grown up on this land. My father and grandfather had tilled these same fields, worked these same acres. Every inch of soil had meaning, and every harvest was more than just work. It was legacy. That morning, with the smell of dried stalks mixing with diesel fuel, I felt that connection stronger than ever. My mind was focused on the task. Eyes scanning rows, hands gripping the wheel, feet working the pedals like second nature. But peace never lasts long when Karen is involved. Around here, everyone knows her. The HOA Karen, queen of complaints, champion of pettiness, self-declared enforcer of rules that never seemed to exist anywhere except in her imagination. She had written letters about the color of my barn, scolded me for stacking hay bales too close to the road, and even once claimed that my rooster violated noise ordinances. She didn't just dislike me, she disliked the very idea of a farmer living next to her cookie-cutter world of perfect lawns and beige houses. I wasn't even thinking of her that morning. I was too busy with the harvest to care about what she might be plotting. But then, out of nowhere, the quiet morning shattered. I heard it first, the squeal of tires cutting through the air like a scream. My head snapped around, and before I could even process what was happening, a sickening bang echoed across the field. The tractor lurched, metal groaning in protest as something slammed hard into its side. I gripped the wheel, heart pounding, trying to steady the machine before it veered off course. I looked down, disbelief burning in my chest. There, wedged against my tractor, was a shiny black sedan with its front bumper crumpled like paper. Smoke curled lazily from under the hood, the smell of burnt rubber and coolant sour in the crisp autumn air. And stumbling out of the driver's seat, waving her arms and already shouting, was Karen. For a moment, I thought maybe she had lost control, that it was an accident. But the words spilling from her mouth killed that thought instantly. "You can't be out here," she screamed, pointing wildly at the tractor as if it had leapt into her path. "This is community land, and you're a danger to everyone." I blinked at her, stunned. "Community land?" I shouted back over the rumble of the still-running engine. "This is my farm. My family's land. What are you talking about?" But Karen wasn't listening. She stormed closer, her face red, hair frazzled from the impact, and gestured like a madwoman toward the dented metal of my tractor. "Look at this! You're destroying property values with your machines. I've told the board this was a problem. Now look what's happened." I stared at her, the absurdity almost too much to process. Here she was, having just driven straight into my tractor during harvest, and somehow she was trying to blame me. The anger rose like fire in my gut when I turned to inspect the damage. My tractor wasn't just a vehicle. It was the core of the harvest. Without it, the entire schedule could fall apart. And there, right in the middle of the season, sat a massive dent gouged into the steel, courtesy of her carelessness. "You hit me," I said, my voice low but sharp. "You drove your car into my tractor on my land, and now you're trying to blame me?" Karen folded her arms, chin jutting out defiantly. "You shouldn't even be running that thing so close to the road. It's reckless. People have to use this road, you know. You could have killed me." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Killed you? Lady, you're lucky you didn't kill yourself ramming a car into a machine 10 times its size. And reckless? I'm harvesting crops on farmland. That's about as normal as it gets." But Karen wasn't interested in reason. She never was. She thrived on confrontation, on twisting the narrative until she looked like the victim. I could already see her rehearsing her version of the story in her head, one where I was the dangerous farmer threatening her peaceful suburban life. As she ranted, neighbors began to gather. People driving by slowed down, rolling down windows to see what was happening. A few of them parked at the edge of the road and stepped out, drawn by the shouting. Karen seemed to revel in the audience, raising her voice even louder. "He's always been a problem. This whole farm is a problem. I told the HOA he'd cause an accident eventually. I clenched my fists, every muscle in my body screaming at me not to explode. She wanted me angry. She wanted me to lash out so she could paint herself as the poor woman harassed by the big, bad farmer. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the crumpled front end of her sedan pressed against my tractor. Snap, the wide shot showing where she had veered off the road and onto my property. Snap, the dent in the machine, the skid marks leading straight to it, and the stunned faces of the neighbors watching. Evidence. Cold, undeniable evidence. Karen froze when she saw what I was doing. What do you think you're doing? She snapped. Documenting, I said flatly. Because when the police show up, and they will, you're not twisting this into some story where I'm the villain. Not this time. Her face tightened, a flicker of panic behind her fury. I'll call them first, she shouted, pulling out her own phone. I'll tell them you tried to run me off the road. They'll believe me. They always do, and that was when I realized just how far she was willing to go. She wasn't just careless, she was dangerous. She'd lie, manipulate, and drag my name through the mud without hesitation. But this time, she had picked the wrong battle. Because the truth was on my side, and I had the proof to back it up. I stood there in the crisp autumn air, surrounded by golden fields and broken metal, watching Karen pace with her phone pressed to her ear. And as I leaned against my tractor, arms crossed, I felt the fury harden into something colder, determination. This wasn't going to end with her shouting me down at the side of the road. No, this time, it was going to end with her finally facing the consequences she had dodged for far too long. I stood there, leaning against the side of my dented tractor, arms crossed, letting her dig her own grave. Every neighbor within earshot could hear the lie coming out of her mouth, and their faces said it all. Some looked disgusted, others amused, and a few shook their heads with that same tired expression you give when you've seen this kind of circus before. I had already taken my pictures, and now I was recording video, steady, clear shots of Karen ranting into her phone with my tractor and her car in the same frame. Her sedan still pressed up against the steel, smoke curling from its hood, the skid marks clear as day. And me, calm, collected, not threatening a thing. She finally hung up, turned to me and sneered with the kind of confidence only someone who believed they could talk their way out of anything could muster. They're on their way, she said smugly. And when they get here, you're finished. You'll never run this farm circus again. I didn't even bother answering. I just lifted my phone and let the camera catch her face, her posture, her venom. The red creeping into her cheeks deepened when she realized I wasn't going to play her game. The waiting was the hardest part. The silence that fell after her rant felt thick, broken only by the occasional crackle of her engine cooling down and the restless murmurs of neighbors shifting in the background. I could hear one whisper, "She actually hit his tractor," and another mutter, "Unbelievable." She's going too far this time, then faintly the sound of sirens in the distance. They grew louder, closer, until two sheriff's cruisers pulled up. Lights flashing against the gold of the corn and the dented steel of my tractor. Karen's face lit up like Christmas morning. She straightened, smoothed her blouse, and plastered on an expression of trembling innocence. The kind of look you'd expect from someone reporting a stolen pie, not someone who had just rammed a 2-ton machine with her own car. The deputies stepped out, hands resting casually near their belts. They scanned the scene with practiced eyes, already piecing things together before anyone spoke. One of them, a tall man with a trimmed beard I recognized as Deputy Harlan, gave me a nod before turning to Karen. "You're the one who called?" he asked. "Yes," Karen burst out, rushing toward him like a moth to a flame. He nearly killed me with that monstrous tractor. He swerved right into the road, and I had no choice but to protect myself. "Look at my car. Look what he did!" I caught the twitch of Harlan's eyebrow as he looked from her crumpled sedan to my towering tractor, then back again. "Uh-huh," he said, non-committal. "And you said he threatened you?" "Yes," she wailed dramatically, putting a hand to her chest. He was screaming at me, waving his phone in my face, trying to intimidate me. I'm terrified. I don't even know how I'm standing here. I cleared my throat, stepping forward, phone still in hand. "Deputy, if you'd like, I can show you exactly what happened. Photos, video. Even the neighbors here saw it." Karen's head whipped around so fast I thought she might strain her neck. "Don't listen to him. He's making things up. He always does this, twists everything. He thinks because he owns some land, he can bully everyone else." Harlan held up a hand, silencing her mid-rant. "Ma'am, we'll hear both sides. But first, let's start with the basics. This tractor belongs to you?" "Yes," I said firmly. "It's mine. And this," I gestured to the endless rows of corn, "is my farm." She drove off the road onto my property and straight into my equipment while I was harvesting. Karen gasped theatrically, as though the truth itself was offensive. "That's not true!" "This whole road should be considered part of the community. He doesn't even have the right to block it like this." Harlan exchanged a glance with the second deputy, a shorter woman named Collins who was busy inspecting the tire marks on the ground. She squatted down, following the black streaks with her eyes until they led right from the road to where Karen's bumper had kissed my tractor. Collins stood, brushing off her knees, and shook her head slightly. "Tracks are clear," she said. She veered off, straight into him. "There's no sign the tractor moved out of its lane," Karen stammered, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. But he was too close. He was operating dangerously. On his property," Collins added dryly. I unlocked my phone and handed it to Harlan. "Here's video if you need it. Shows everything she said since she hit me, including her threatening to tell a false story." Harlan scrolled, his expression unreadable as he watched the footage. Karen fidgeted, wringing her hands, trying desperately to peek over his shoulder. When he was done, he let out a long sigh and handed the phone back. "Ma'am," he said, turning to her, "this doesn't look good. Not only do we have your car on his tractor, but the video shows him calm and you, well, less than calm. You told dispatch he threatened you, but that doesn't seem to be the case." Karen's mask cracked. Her face flushed crimson, her lips curling into a snarl. "You don't understand. He's been a menace to this community for years. Everyone complains about him. The dust, the noise, the eyesore of this. Farm!" Collins raised a brow. "Ma'am, farming isn't a crime. Driving off the road and causing property damage, however." That was the moment Karen snapped. Her voice pitched higher, words spilling out faster, more desperate. "You can't side with him. I'm part of the HOA. We make the rules here. If he won't follow them, then what's the point of us even having a community?" That did it. The neighbors, who had been standing quietly until then, erupted. One man shouted, "You're the only one who complains, Karen." A woman added, "We're tired of you harassing him every season." Another neighbor muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe now she'll finally get what's coming." Karen spun around, eyes wide, betrayed by the very people she thought she ruled. Her confidence faltered, and for the first time, she looked small, cornered. Harlan pulled out his notepad. "All right, here's how this is going to go. We'll need to file a report for property damage. That means exchanging insurance information, and given what I've seen here, liability's falling on you, ma'am," Karen sputtered. "Insurance? On a tractor? That's ridiculous." I crossed my arms, staring her down. "It's not ridiculous when your car just caused thousands of dollars worth of damage. That machine isn't a toy, it's my livelihood." Collins nodded. "You're lucky no one got hurt. Could have been a lot worse." The deputies guided Karen back to her car, which looked more pitiful by the minute. The hood sagged, coolant dripping onto the dirt, steam hissing softly. She was forced to dig through her glove box for her insurance card, her hands trembling with fury. Every motion screamed humiliation. When the tow truck finally arrived, it felt like justice had rolled in with it. The driver took one look at the wrecked sedan and shook his head, muttering under his breath as he hooked it up. Karen protested, of course, demanding they be careful with her vehicle as if it wasn't already half ruined. The tow truck hauled it away slowly, Karen trailing behind like a scolded child. I stood by my tractor, watching it all unfold. Neighbors clapped me on the back, some chuckling, some shaking their heads in disbelief. "About time she got put in her place," one said. Another added, "She won't live this down." The deputies wrapped things up, promising me a copy of the report for my insurance. "Don't worry," Harlan said, giving me a look of sympathy. "This one's going in the books the right way. You've got the evidence. She won't wiggle out of it." Karen shot me one last glare before she climbed into the passenger seat of a friend's car to be driven away. Her face was pale, her jaw clenched tight, and for once she had no words left to throw. As the sun dipped lower, painting the fields in shades of amber and red, I climbed back into my tractor. The dent was there, ugly and frustrating, but fixable. The harvest still had to go on, and as the engine roared back to life, I felt a satisfaction deeper than any victory she could try to claim. Because this time, it wasn't her word against mine. This time she had hit more than just steel. She had hit the wall of her own arrogance, and for once it was her car, not my life, that got towed away. I didn't bother correcting them. The truth was already stranger than fiction. Karen, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. I heard through neighbors that she'd stormed out of the community meeting, screaming about conspiracies, how everyone was against her, and how I had plotted to ruin her life. Her car, still sitting at the repair shop, was a testament to reality. Bent frame, smashed hood, engine nearly totaled. The insurance adjuster, I was told, practically laughed when he saw the damage. But what really stung for Karen wasn't the money. It was the humiliation. For years, she'd strutted around the neighborhood like a self-appointed sheriff. She policed mailbox decorations, threatened fines for lawn lengths, even counted how many times kids rode their bikes on the cul-de-sac. People tolerated her because she was loud and relentless. Most just avoided conflict with her, but after the tractor incident, the tide shifted. Suddenly, neighbors who'd been silent for years were speaking up. It started with Mrs. Dempsey, who lived 2 doors down from Karen. She marched right up during a public HOA board meeting and demanded to know why Karen had been allowed to keep her position when she'd nearly caused a tragedy. Karen tried to laugh it off, calling Mrs. Dempsey misinformed and gullible, but it was no use. The room wasn't on her side anymore. The crowd grumbled, people rolled their eyes, and when Mrs. Dempsey shouted, "She could have killed him," there were nods all around. I wasn't even at that meeting, but word traveled fast. By the next morning, I had 3 different neighbors stop by the farm, bringing pies, cookies, and even a couple of cold beers as tokens of solidarity. "She's done for," one of them said. "No one's buying her act anymore." Meanwhile, the sheriff's department wasn't letting it slide either. The report was filed, the evidence was airtight, and Karen was facing charges for reckless driving and filing a false police report. She'd have her day in court soon enough, and I had no doubt how it would end. I could still hear Deputy Harlan's voice in my head as he left the farm that evening. "Don't worry, we've got this one handled. People like her run out of rope eventually." I thought that would be the end of it. But Karen didn't go quietly. She tried to spin the narrative, posting rants online about how I was a menace farmer destroying the community's peace, and how I had set her up with staged video. It might have worked in another town with people who didn't know me, but not here. Folks had seen me working these fields day after day, year after year. They knew my reputation. They knew hers. The comments under her posts said it all. "Karen, enough already. Give it a rest." And my favorite, "Lady, you drove into a tractor." End of story. Even the HOA board, usually timid, had reached its breaking point. 2 weeks after the crash, they called a special meeting. Karen showed up, still convinced she could rally support, but it backfired. Neighbors lined up at the microphone, one after another, telling their stories of being harassed, bullied, or fined over the smallest things. By the time they finished, the board had no choice. They voted unanimously to remove Karen from any position of authority. She sat there, red-faced, trembling with fury, while the room applauded her downfall. I didn't attend, but later that night I got a call from Mrs. Dempsey herself. "She's out," she said, her voice triumphant. She tried to spin it, but no one's buying it anymore. You should have seen her face. Priceless. But for me, the sweetest justice wasn't the applause, the charges, or even seeing her car towed. It was the silence. For the first time in years, I could work my fields without looking over my shoulder, without wondering what petty complaint she'd file next. The farm felt lighter, as if her absence had lifted a weight from the very soil itself. Still, Karen wasn't entirely done. She tried one last stunt, filing a civil claim against me for emotional distress. Her lawyer sent a letter full of fancy words about how I had maliciously recorded her and subjected her to ridicule. I handed it straight to my attorney, who nearly laughed himself hoarse before drafting a 2-sentence response attaching the sheriff's report and video evidence. The claim evaporated like morning dew. The day her trial finally came, I didn't even need to testify. The video spoke louder than anything I could say. The judge watched it, listened to the deputies, and shook his head in disbelief. Karen's lawyer tried to argue, but it was useless. The verdict: guilty of reckless driving, guilty of filing a false report, fines, community service, and mandatory driving classes. Neighbors packed the courtroom, some just to witness the spectacle. When the gavel fell, you could feel the collective sigh of relief. Karen slumped in her chair, defeated. No more smug smirks, no more shrill declarations, just silence. Afterward, I drove my tractor down the road again, through the same stretch where it had all gone down. The fields were alive with golden stalks swaying in the breeze, the sun painting everything in warm light. My machine rumbled steady beneath me, a reminder of resilience, of stubbornness, of roots too deep to be shaken by one bitter woman with too much time on her hands. And as I steered it forward, I realized something. It wasn't about the tractor or the car or even the charges. It was about respect. Respect for work, for land, for truth. Karen had none of it, and in the end, that's what undid her. Now, when the neighbors wave as I pass by, it feels different. It feels like gratitude, like solidarity, like we all learned something from her fall. Karen had tried to dent more than my tractor. She had tried to dent my life. But all she managed to do was crash herself headfirst into the immovable force of her own arrogance. And as the police hauled her away that day, her car dangling behind the tow truck like a broken toy, I knew one thing for certain. Harvests come and go, but some reckonings last forever.